As sports history fans, we often reminisce about the legends. Willis Reed limping onto the NBA Finals court, Kurt Schilling's bloody sock, Kerry Strug's courageous dismount, and so many more. These moments often define sports history. But what about the countless injuries that did not become legends, or careers that were derailed due to inadequate care? That's where this episode's sponsor comes in. Introducing to you, ILP Sports Consultants, your trusted sports injury partner, available 24/7. Brian Maelli at ILP Sports Consultants has over 20 years of experience in the orthopedic and sports medicine industry, and he has worked with athletes across the gamut, from youth to amateurs, professionals, in almost every sport played in the United States of America, accommodating athletes at every stage of their career. This adaptability ensures that ILP services are perfectly tailored to your skill level, no matter where you are in your athletic journey. With ILP, you are in control. Choose the steps that matter most to you. Diagnosis, treatment plan, recovery, or the whole journey. ILP services are tailored to your unique needs. Rushing for care is a common pitfall, leading to future problems. ILP Sports Consultants helps you make the right decisions, ensuring that you receive timely and safe care. And here's a bonus. Brian hosts the Injured List podcast, sharing insights and athlete stories you won't want to miss. Whether you're a concerned parent or grandparent, or an athlete yourself seeking guidance, ILP Sports Consultants is your beacon of hope in sports injury management. Visit ilpsports.com today. That's the letters ilpsports.com. ILP Sports Consultants, where your well-being is the priority and your recovery is the mission. Choose ILP Sports Consultants for a healthier sports journey, helping you get back in the game the smart way.
Blog Talk Radio.
Tonight we'll go back in time to seasons past, when 22 men graced the rugged fields of yesterday, fighting for one more first down, one more yard gain, one final score, which would bring victory after 60 minutes of battle on the gridiron. Tonight, we'll explore the world of Gridiron Greats. Welcome to Gridiron Greats Football History and Memorabilia on the Gridiron Greats Publishing and Broadcasting Network, in conjunction with Swick Enterprises. And we're live from the Wallingford, Connecticut home of Gridiron Greats Magazine. I'm Bob Swick, publisher and editor of Gridiron Greats Magazine, and I'll be your host for the show. Gridiron Greats is the only publication in America which focuses upon the history and memorabilia of the North American football game since its inception in 1869. We cover 150-plus years of football history and memorabilia. And you can find us on the web at gridirongreatsmagazine.com. It is at this time I'd like to introduce my co-host. He's a senior contributing writer to Gridiron Greats Magazine, a football memorabilia historian specializing in pre-World War II items, in particular Red Grange, and also Seattle Seahawk items, in particular Steve Largent. He hails from Portland, Oregon, Mr. Joe Squires. Joe, welcome to the show this evening.
You're on fire today, Captain. Great intro. Thank you.
Joe, we're back with another show. As the day's light fade into darkness, the compound, I see the ever-present dark starting to roll in over Wallingford. But anyways, let's lead off. We'll talk about a few things before our special guest comes on. And the first area we want to look at, there's an auction you want to talk about, and let's fill in our audience on it.
Oh, man. Well, we're in kind of a little bit of an auction drought lately. All the good auction houses that we usually follow are in between auctions. I mean, we've got a few coming up. Gridiron, sponsor Al Chris and Fuller with Love of the Game has one that he's getting ready to fire off here pretty quick. Looking forward to that opening up. But Golden Auctions at an auction that ended on Monday. Excuse me. And,
Monday.
Man, was it a big one. There's some stuff that's recognizable to us vintage football collectors and some stuff that will have the captain going, what the hell? So let's start with the normal stuff. A 1976 Topps number 148 Walter Payton rookie card graded in a PSA 10. When I got into collecting in early 2000, this is a $3,000 or $4,000 card. I sold mine for quite a bit more than that when I got out of rookie cards. This one had a hammer price of $62,730.
Oh.
This is an all-time high. That's probably triple the all-time high I've seen. So the question is raised, do people who go to Golden Auctions, are they that fan loyal, or is there shenanigans going on? But either way, $62,730 for a Walter Payton rookie card.
That's just beyond comprehension.
Yep. Number two on my list of. Yep. Number two on my list of. I'm going to watch the captain blow steam out of his ears. Was a 2000 SP Authentic number 118 Tom Brady rookie card. This is the classic one. Him wearing a red Don't Touch Me quarterback jersey, numbered 1 to 1,250. PSA 10, sold for $51,660. This is about when I started getting into collecting. It was about a $3,000 or $4,000 card. I sold mine for quite a bit more than that, and this is almost triple what a normal card would go for in this range.
Putting it in perspective between those two cards, you could buy a piece of property right now.
Yeah, no
and
kidding.
Acreage.
Wait a minute. The best is yet to come, Captain. The best is yet to come. 1981 Topps number 216 Joe Montana rookie card in a PSA 10. $29,520.
Oh.
Almost triple what it normally sells.
Wow.
Nearly triple.
Wow.
SP Authentic, 1998 SP Authentic 14 Peyton Manning rookie card, $8,610. Manning's not getting much love, even though he's eligible for the Hall of Fame next year. That playoff contender card, that 2000 autographed playoff contender card that you and I have shook our head at. A PSA 8 sold for $29,520, and a BGS 8.5 for $20,910. In PSA 10, that card's gone for $140,000. And
unbelievable.
Have your medication handy, Captain. Here's the two that I really wanted to get to. 2005 SP Authentic NFL logo patches number 252 Aaron Rodgers. BGS 9.5 went for $229,200. Was that you, Captain? It's an Aaron Rodgers card. I assumed it was you. $229,200. Two of your favorite things, all under one roof. Modern shiny cards, patches, and graded 9.5 plastic tomb. Nearly $250,000 for that.
That's just mind-boggling. Mind-boggling.
You thought that was mind-boggling? I got one more for you, Bob.
I can only. I got a feeling. I know what this one is, but go for it.
2017 Panini National Treasures Black I don't know if there's a brown or a red one, but this is the Panini National Treasures Black, number 161. Patrick Mahomes, signed patch rookie card, BGS 9.
Oh, yeah.
Went for $236,160. Bob, I know we try not to use profanity on this show, but what the hell is going on here?
Oh, that is.
I won't even.
That's
yeah.
sick. Well, all right,
Lamar
so
Jackson. Lamar Jackson went for
what's
$55,000. There's another Patrick Mahomes card that went for $29,000. Another Patrick Mahomes Contenders card that went for $40,000. Somebody dropped a lot of coin on a lot of modern cards, yeah, it's pretty fascinating, isn't it?
All right. So what's your immediate take on it? What's your feeling? What's going on? Let's cut through the layers here, and let's provide our audience with some logical explanation of what is driving the market right now for these prices to be existing. Because I can't comprehend it. I really can't.
Ditto, Captain. The only thing I can come up with, people who've made money in the stock market, obviously this is discretionary income. People who've made money in the stock market, people who've made money in real, whatever it may be, they've got some discretionary income. They're looking for another way to invest their money. They're seeing a lot of headlines splashed across with, frankly, stuff like this. And they're investing in these cards. You don't spend $250,000 on a card that's 2 and 3 years old, so that you can, put it on your mantle and enjoy it. This has to be people who are investing in cardboards. It has to be. This same auction had a Honus Wagner. I don't like to talk baseball, but you can't ignore it. Had a Honus Wagner, a PSA 1 that's, got missing in the upper left-hand corner. It sold for $1,392,000. Yep. And a Mickey Mantle rookie card in PSA 8 that was incredible sold for $584,000. I mean, this, PSA 8 card, and this is usually $100,000. So this is, quite a bit more than just the normal, anyways. But a lot of money was spent at Golden last night. That's all I got.
Yeah, and I just find it, I'm literally speechless over the whole thing. Looking at, seeing what those cards went for, and it's just totally illogical to me. Other than what you're saying, is there's so much money out there, they can't, wait to put it somewhere, type of thing, and that's basically what's happening. You know what I mean? So that's a major issue that's going on. So
you can 1031 into anything. I mean, if you're doing exchanges, tax avoidance exchanges, you can. I mean, I sold a property to a guy once who was an artist, and he'd sold a piece of artwork, and he 1031'd it into a building. So maybe this is people leaving the real estate market and trying to shelter gains and 1031ing into cardboard. I don't know, but I don't understand it. And I guess, for us old salty guys who've been in the hobby a long time, and you obviously got me by a couple of years, it's the modern stuff I don't understand. The high-end graded stuff is so subjective. I definitely don't understand. And, even a Walter Payton rookie card for going for triple the amount that it normally does, raises an eyebrow with me. So are people that loyal to Golden auctions, or who knows? But
it's crazy.
November, we have about 4 standard auctions coming online in November. We have REA. We've Brian Dwyer was a guest here. We've had Mile High's coming up in Leland's, who we've had a guest before. We should really get Josh with Leland's back. He was one of my favorite guests. And as I mentioned, Love of the Game firing up in November. So some good auctions firing up here in the next 2-3 weeks that always have some good things. So I get antsy. I love looking at auctions. You hear people talking about auction fatigue, too many auctions going on. I'm the opposite.
Yep.
You kidding me? I want to see 5, 6 auctions going on at once. I want to see everything they've got to offer. I love auctions. Show me the football cards. I love it.
Well, I think in this case, I think everyone is shocked by what was realized as far as prices were concerned, and as such, basically, it was, just to me, it almost non-comprehensible to hear about those prices. It just doesn't make sense. In a way, it's good for the hobby. In a way, it's really not good for the hobby, because again, if how limited are the newer cards, in my opinion. Even the Peyton rookie, there's a lot of them out there.
Yeah.
And to run it for $60,000, I mean, it doesn't make sense to me. It really doesn't. So, but unfortunately, that's where the market is right now. And like you said too, people make money in other areas, whether it's the stock market or whatever, or sell other assets, and they really feel that they have a cushion by investing in graded cards. And I really can't see it, but obviously it's happening. So that's it. It is
it's
what
pretty
it is.
Interesting.
But
it's pretty interesting. But it's funny because the most money I've ever spent on a card was buying a Bronco Nagurski PSA 8. But that was 14 years ago. Wasn't even anywhere near what these are going for. Who's got that kind of dry powder laying around? They can drop $250,000 on a 2.5, 3-year-old card.
Right.
I guess
like I said,
those aren't the circles. Those aren't the circles you and I hang in, I guess.
I think I look at it from my perspective. Given what $250,000 could buy, I just assume buy a condo or property somewhere. As much as I enjoy my football cards and memorabilia, I wouldn't spend that money. That's the reality of it. It's a hobby to me. It's not a bubble that could pop at any time. Realistically viewing, did I really, or the person who bought it, did they really overpay for the product, or the item or whatever? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's a major problem, major issue that may occur down the road with the overpaying of graded cards and the euphoria over a PSA 10 card or something that's graded so highly at the same time. But whatever. You never know, and we will never know. And
exactly,
we could be 4 shows down the road, and we find another auction, and the prices are even stronger than this auction. So you never know what's going to happen.
Maybe one of these days, Captain, we will have a guest on who specializes in buying up, one of one modern, graded cards. And we'll have that guest on, and we'll have one question. What the hell are you doing? And then let them talk for about half an hour while you and I listen.
Yep, exactly.
Who knows?
Exactly.
So, well.
Well, moving from the auctions and with the few minutes we have before our guest comes on, I just want to talk real briefly. The latest issue of Gridiron Greats is out. And again, if you don't subscribe to Gridiron Greats magazine, what are you waiting for? We had an incredible issue that came out. I know you had a nice article in there. Very interesting articles. Tell us again, very briefly, about your article.
It was the most popular football card set. And it was me looking back for the last decade at the top registry, how many people have qualified registries collecting certain sets, and just what's the most popular football set based on who collects it. And it ended up being the 1955 Topps All-American set, without a doubt. Was it. So, pretty interesting. I enjoy writing articles. I love just picking weird topics, and,
to me, it's an interesting and it is a realistic, article. Each decade has a favorite set. Each collector, depending on their collecting interest, has a favorite set. each era of collector. Older collectors enjoy maybe the 40s and 50s cards more. Younger collectors obviously like 80s and 90s or the 00s. It all ties into what the hobby is. There's no right or wrong way collecting the item, and if you really like something, you're gonna collect it, and that's it. And I don't have a problem with somebody, and we got readers of Gridiron Greats who say, I like to read a little more about the newer stuff just to try to get more educated about it. And I always say, well, I'm researching it myself to try to understand it more because to me, I just can't comprehend. Again, you have a Panini that comes out with basically 25 different brands of the same player.
Yeah.
And I mean, how do you collect this stuff? I mean, what? I can't comprehend that either, So, again, I always try to tell people, why don't you just try to collect one set of whatever, Score, in this case, Score, Donruss, whatever, and just stay with it every year. And then if you got a favorite team or a player, pick up a few team sets, a few player cards of the other player, of the player itself, and, that's your collection. That's interesting. You know what I mean? So, I don't know. It's a lot different than in my day when I just collected Topps or Fleer or Philly or Fleer in Action. And any oddball or insert sets I would collect, and that's it,
Yeah. Well,
amazing.
when there was one set to collect, I mean, you started getting into it when it's 65 Topps and 65 Philly. And, that went on, through for 4 years there. I grew up where there was one set. I mean, I didn't know that. I didn't know Fleer had competing sets until later on in my life because just nobody displayed them. Topps ruled the world.
Right.
So
Right. Yeah. Very true. Very true. All right, our guest is here, and I don't want to keep him, and I want to introduce him, and we'll get into our show. Our special guest tonight is a longtime fan of the St. Louis Football Cardinals and has the Twitter account Big Red STL, along with a website, which is extremely interesting, called thebigRedZone.com. It is at this time I'd like to introduce to our show Mr. Bob Underwood. Bob, welcome to the show this evening.
Thanks, guys. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Perfect.
Oh, okay, great. You guys are killing me because I had a 1976 Walter Payton rookie and a 1981 Joe Montana rookie. And I didn't really want to hear that part about how much they're going for. I don't have them any longer, but
if you had just held it to the
that.
show, if you had just held it to tonight's show, we could have given you the information how to get them graded, and you probably either buy property with it or whatever, and it'd be all set. Bob, I want to thank you for being on the show tonight, and I want to lead off by asking you, how did you become interested in St. Louis Cardinals football?
Well, I was probably 7 or 8 years old, and the first team I remember watching was the 1974 Cardinals, and that was a great time to be a Cardinal fan. It was Don Coryell's second year. They were coming off 3 4-win seasons, maybe 4-win seasons in a row. And they started the season 7-0. They won the NFC East, the first time they had appeared in the postseason in 26 years. And, that team just had some great characters as well. The offensive line alone with Dobler and Deerdorf and Tom Banks.
Yeah.
Bob Young. I've got a video of Bob Young I found of him beating Lou Ferrigno, the Incredible Hulk, in a tug of war in the World's Strongest Man competition in 1978 or 79.
Oh, wow.
Just some great characters and the playmakers they had, Gray and Metcalf and Jimmy Hart, the quarterback. And, those guys were all over town back then. It was a little bit of a different era, as you know. In the town I lived in, we had like an exposition hall, and every time there was a card show or a boat show, an auto show, a flea market, the Cardinals would send a couple of players out and sign autographs, and they were free. That you'd stand in line or whatever, you'd bring whatever, your football or whatever you wanted signed, and it wasn't always Metcalf and Jim Hart. It might be Mark Arneson or Bob Rowe or someone like that, a second tier or third tier player that, as an 8 or 9 year old, it was just a great time growing up with the cardiac cards.
The cardiac cards, I love it.
That's cool. That's definitely cool.
Great website. It's Bob got it right. It's thebigredzone.com. I was looking, when he sent it to me, it was just, I thought it was Big Red Zone, but great website. I've been traipsing around it the last couple of days. Just your blogs on it are great. The landing page, when you first click on it, the landing page was just a left to right swath of shirtless hairy dudes, including Dan Buerdorf on the right. I went to click on it before the show just to check it out again, and I noticed the landing page had changed. Now it's everybody at the national anthem.
I think they rotate.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about your website and what it takes to put something in this together, and just because, man, you've got a lot of great content on here, players, games, events. It's amazing.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It was, I started some social media accounts probably 6 years ago, and I started the website. It's really a blog, probably 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, and really the purpose is to just document the history of the St. Louis Cardinals. And as you've seen, I've written many stories on former players. I've interviewed a few players, broadcasters, games. We've had during football season the last couple of years. I've kind of become the default Cardinals alumni guy here in St. Louis. So I get these players together, and we go to a local bar. And the fans come out and they love it. I mean, the Rams aren't here any longer, so they feel kind of forgotten. So I think they really appreciate being remembered. But I wish I had more time to write on the blog, but it's more of a hobby. I do have a retired St. Louis Globe Democrat writer and sporting news writer, Dennis Dillon, who's written a couple of guest Where Are They Now type interviews with some players, and we've got one coming out soon on Jim Otis, the former Cardinal fullback, who actually led the NFC in rushing in 1975, which is hard to believe.
Wow.
It's yeah, I noticed there was a lot of blogs that went all the way down. Your last one was about Larry Wilson passing away, and it kind of scrolls down. It read like you're gathering your thoughts. I was looking at the dates on there. You had Dennis Dillon did one, which I assume is what you're talking about. It's about your games all the way back. Just some really cool autographed pictures that you have up here too.
The stories are kind of categorized on the right there, so you can click on the players and you see all the player posts. I actually, with the 100-year anniversary of the NFL last year, I actually ranked the top 100 St. Louis football Cardinals, which was a little bit harder than I thought it was going to be. The top 20 or 30 weren't too hard, but when you get down to only 28 years of football and you're in 80 to 100, it's kind of tough. I think I had a punter number 100.
A couple of years ago, when the Seahawks lost the Super Bowl to the Patriots, I was in a store and I saw a Seattle Seahawks NFC West or NFC champion jacket, and I just kind of shook my head. And Bob and I were talking about it. I'm like, wearing an NFC West champion jacket, basically is we were the first loser. We lost the Super Bowl, and I'm like, I don't get wearing an NFC championship jacket. So making the top 100 best websites for the St. Louis Cardinals kind of reminded me of that jacket, Bob. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it was fun to do. The fans, this is all about memories and things like that. So a lot of players look at this and their families, so they really appreciate the work that goes into it. I think they feel like they're forgotten.
I truly enjoy your website, and a little off script here. I pulled for the show tonight. Anybody who knows me knows I'm big on football publications. I enjoy them. I have a lot of them. I really wish people would collect them more because I think they're missing out. But I have right in front of me a 1979 St. Louis Cardinals media guide. of which I have on the front cover stapled a St. Louis Football Cardinals Bing Devine Vice President of Administration business card, in which he signed Mr. I can't read it. The guy's name, it looks like Bradikar or something. My compliments, BD. And I thought that was pretty cool. And I remember I looked in my files. I paid $1 for this beauty at a card show back in the late 80s. And I've had it in my library ever since. I have a handful of St. Louis Cardinal media guides. But I always say, I've thought of you now since I've been following you, which is our next question, on your Twitter account. And I really enjoy it because I love watching the little inserts of films that you have on the Twitter account. I try to retweet a lot of your stuff, because I want people to see you and hopefully they start following you. Because, man, oh man, you are the, in my opinion, the keeper of the St. Louis Cardinals franchise for that 27-year period. So let's talk a little bit about your Twitter account there, Big Red STL.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. It's a lot of fun. It's taken a lot of work over the years. A lot of those videos come off of YouTube. I purchased a lot of the Big Red highlight films over the years, the season highlights. I think I'm only missing one. 1962 is the only one I'm missing. So I'm able to get a lot of the game clips, from those. And there was a guy on YouTube a few years ago that posted all of the This Week in Pro Football episodes from like the mid-60s all the way up to the late 70s, early 80s. So I've probably got game clips of 85-90% of all the games the Cardinals played in St. Louis. So categorizing them, and like today, I think you saw that, in 1962 on this day, Sonny Randall caught 16 passes for 256 yards. So I've got a video of a touchdown pass he caught, And so that's really what the Twitter account is about is, I've got a Google Calendar full of birthdays and on this day, events and history, they just pop up every day. And a lot of the stuff I tweet, I've already got it pre-written and kind of saved in the address or the calendar, so it's, I got smart last year and started doing that, so I didn't have to retype everything every year, and because it's time consuming, but that's really the purpose of the Twitter account. I also have a Facebook group that has a lot of former players on the group and with their family members, and they participate. Roger Worley's on there, Stump Mitchell, Bubba Baker, Mel Gray, Johnny Rowland, Jackie Smith. I mean, it's really neat, and the fans get a kick out of chatting with these guys.
Yeah, there's a pretty cool video on your Twitter, where they interview Mel Gray. It's like you did this about a week ago, or no, excuse me, I think yesterday, where you're like, hey, a year ago we had this Big Red get together. Somebody asked Mel Gray who the fastest person he ever saw was, or who ever played against was. And I can't remember what he said because I watched it yesterday, but he's like, yeah, guy at Kentucky. He goes, I'm fast. This guy at Kentucky beat me, and I forget, but it was just funny to hear. It's always fun to hear professionals, who they admired.
Yeah, Mel likes to talk. It's hard to believe he ran a 3.9 in the 40. He was a world-class sprinter in college in Missouri, and I can't remember the guy's name either. But right at the end, he's like, "And I didn't even win. Somebody else ran a 3.8."
I didn't know he was that fast. Are you kidding me? 3.9, 40?
Him and Bob Hayes, Bullet Bob Hayes, in the off-season in the early 70s. These guys used to sprint. They'd have exhibitions where they would sprint just to get some extra cash in the off season. And Bill Bidwell, the Cardinals owner, brought Mel in, I think it was 1973, and pretty much demanded that he stop doing that because he was afraid he was going to get hurt. And Mel, he was like, well, give me a pay raise and I'll stop doing it. Because, these guys had the off-season jobs back in the day. They didn't make any money.
So I think the record 40, so at the, at the Combine, they started tracking that. I forget when the Combine came in, but probably about a month ago, I really went down this rabbit hole of, Bo Jackson, and he was talking about, the fastest 40. I think the fastest 40 they have tracked is like, it's like a 4.19 or something like that. So this guy was world class. I didn't realize it was that fast.
Yeah, that's what he said, 3.9. I don't know if anyone verified it.
Yeah, who knows? That's fast. I'm traipsing around. I on your social media a little bit, and I assume you're ex-Navy. Were you a boiler tech on the USS Utah?
I was not. I mean, the Utah is actually in Pearl Harbor. My grandpa was on that ship, and it was the first ship torpedoed by the Japanese in 1941. So I actually run a Twitter page on the USS Utah, and I actually have a website on that gets a lot of hits. So the Utah is still in the water in Pearl Harbor. The Arizona and the Utah are the two ships that they didn't pull out of the harbor. So pretty neat story. Not many people know it. Yeah. I was actually a Navy nuke. I was on the USS Mississippi. I was a machinist mate. So,
I was a machinist mate nuke as well. I was
really?
an MM nuke as well. I was on the Georgia, SSBN 729.
Yeah, I was on a cruiser on the Coast. So, neat.
How old are you? Where'd you, if you don't mind me asking, where'd you go to nuke power school? I went to Orlando, NTS Orlando.
Well, yeah, me too. So I was in I went to MMA school in Great Lakes. I was the last class in 1986. And then nuke school was in Orlando. So I actually went to A school in Great Lakes in '86.
Okay. Yeah, they combined it. So the A school, the A school was in Florida by the time I hit there in '89. So
yep.
So I did my boot camp, my A school, and my nuke power in Orlando. The prototype. Idaho Falls. What a small world! I love it. What ship were you on again?
I was on the Mississippi. So it was a cruiser. And it was a surface ship, but it was there were like 600 people on it, so it wasn't like a carrier, and I really enjoyed it. I mean, it wasn't too big, so you kind of knew everyone, but it wasn't so small that you were getting thrown around at sea, with the waves. So it's kind of neat.
Okay, right on. Well, obviously you're always happy to meet another ex-squid. So. I mean, obviously you a tremendous amount of time into your St. Louis. I mean, being a fan. Are you do you collect anything? I mean, Bob and I are both avid collectors.
Yep.
I'm just curious. But there's a lot of people who love football who don't collect as well. So I'm curious if you collect.
I was more of a baseball card collector back in the 70s and 80s, and I still have them. But it was kind of interesting to hear you guys talk about, Bob. I think you had mentioned you were a Topps guy. You collected Topps.
Yep.
And that's the kind of the way I was until Fleer and Donruss came out. And I know you guys don't talk baseball, but it's kind of related. And I collected those. But then when Score and all these Upper Decks and it kind of became a business in the early 90s, late 80s, and I kind of got out of it. It just wasn't fun anymore. But I had, I mentioned I got a bunch of football cards, I think, from the Cardinals, and I'm probably about 10 cards shy of a complete set from 1960 to 1987. So I think they're from the 64 and 65 Philadelphia set. I think it's Philadelphia.
Nice.
Let me know. Send me an email what cards you need. I may have them. If I got them, I'll just send them to you. I mean,
yeah,
they're
pretty random. I've got all the Wilsons and John David Crows, and I've got all those. It's probably someone like Bill Coleman and some of the other guys. But yeah, I'll do that. I've got the football cards. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, well, I was going to mention. These game programs, I started collecting those a couple of years ago, and I have all the media guides too, but these old Game Day magazines and Pro Magazine, and you can find them all over the place on eBay. But my favorites are from the mid to late 60s, because back then each home team would have their own version of the magazine. So you'd get a one that was sold at the stadium, and it would be loaded with photos and interviews of Cardinal players, and then sometime in the 70s, I think the NFL kind of took it over, and they'd have one magazine sold at all the stadiums. There'd be an insert with the rosters and a couple of game notes or something from the game that day, the local game. But so I've been collecting some of the 60s era type programs. So kind of get a kick out of that. Also, one of the neater things I have here recently I found on eBay is it's a hand puppet. And I had never seen one before. I don't know anybody that has seen one. I can take a picture and send it to you, but it's a hand puppet of a little person with a Cardinals helmet on, and they've got a Cardinals jersey. And you stick your hand up in this jersey, and there's a couple of levers in there, and you push the levers, and the puppet's arms come out like Rock'em Sock'em Robot. You know, it's like a boxer. And I'd never seen anything like it. I take it to these fan events and show it around, and people get a kick out of it. I know it's from the 60s, but I hadn't seen that anywhere before. I don't know if you guys know anything about it.
And if memory serves me correctly, I think Marx Brothers made those, and I want to say roughly 64 to maybe 67. I do distinctly remember those when I was a kid. I don't have any in my collection. But now that you mention it, I can literally picture it in my mind. That's pretty cool.
Yep.
And they are not plentiful in any way, shape, or form. So
no, you don't see them anywhere, and this one just happened to be a Cardinal one, you know. And I think I paid $10 for it. I mean, I don't like to spend too much on eBay, but when I see value like that, I go ahead and grab it.
Yeah, they're definitely worth it. Definitely worth it. You know, I was going to say the nice thing about, well, not the nice thing, but to me, the concise thing about following a team that started at a specific date and basically, since you don't collect them when they move to Arizona, you got from 1960 to 1987. And realistically, you could put together a complete run of their football cards. You can do a complete run of their packet schedules from those years. You can do, like you said, you got all the media guides. You could also do a game program, and a ticket stub from most of the games, or let's say all the home games or whatever. So the nice thing to me about collecting a team and specializing in a team like that, you can in theory have a complete collection. You know what I mean? And from a collector's standpoint, that I've always enjoyed. I mean, I'm a Packers fan, and there's no way possible I could put together a run of, you know, every Packer program from 1921 to the current year with ticket stubs or anything like that. And I don't even attempt it type of thing. And in your case, I always thought it was pretty neat because obviously, '88 they moved to Arizona, and you know, most hardcore, I would assume hardcore St. Louis collectors ended their collections of the team when they moved. Nor did they start in the '50s when they were the Chicago Cardinals either. You know what I mean? So it's pretty neat. So I can see somebody specializing in that, or somebody like you know, specializing in having what could consider to be an actual complete collection of their cards and other forms of memorabilia. So that's pretty neat. I thought about that.
Yeah, 1960 wasn't that long ago. You know, when you're looking around for memorabilia, you know, it's only, I mean, 60 years is 60 years, but memorabilia, you know, the football cards are still available, and you know, there's like this hand puppet. I mean, that stuff, it was $10, so you can find things like that that aren't obsolete.
That's very interesting, and to me, it's the fun of collecting too. You know, you got that, and have that ability to do that at the same time. I'm curious, do you have any interesting former player stories that you might want to share with our audience?
Yeah, you know, there's a ton of stories from that 70s Cardiac Cards team, especially with the offensive line, and you know, I could tell stories from the 80s with some of the players and the battles they had with the owner and the VP and all that. But there's one. It's actually Jim Hanifin's favorite story, and he tells it at luncheons. He still tells it at luncheons, and he wrote about it in his book. And it's from 1976. They were in training camp, and I'm sure you guys remember Phyllis George, you know, from the NFL Today.
Yep.
She was coming into St. Louis to interview Conrad Dobler, who was just anointed the dirtiest player in pro football by Sports Illustrated. And so Dobler, you know, he was all excited about the interview, and he even writes about this in one of his books too, I think. And you guys may have heard it, but I like the story that he was all excited about the interview, but the relationship he had with Theodorf and Banks and Jackie Smith, you know, if they found out he was being interviewed by Phyllis George, you know, they would have been razzing him. So he kind of kept it a secret. But somehow Jackie Smith found out about it, and the day of the interview, Conrad had bought a brand new pair of jeans and he had him hanging up in his locker room, and so he went in to take a shower, and Jackie had had enough. You know, he thought Conrad was full of himself, and he got some shears and he cut the pant leg off of one of the legs of his jeans.
Oh my God!
And Conrad comes out. You know, he's mean as hell anyway. He comes out of the shower, and he puts his shirt on. He's got this medallion he put on. You know, and he goes to get his jeans, and he sees one of the legs is cut off, and he just went ballistic. And Coach Hannafin was actually being interviewed by Phyllis George upstairs in the dorm room, and he could hear all the commotion in the locker room. And he tells the story great, you know. But Dobler started throwing chairs, and you know, I don't know if you remember back in the day, they'd have these wooden benches that are like 4 feet long, you know, big heavy benches players would sit on. He picked one of those up and just started slamming it against the lockers, and he demanded to know who cut the leg off, and nobody would tell him. You know, and the locker room cleared out, and Hannafin tells a story about a year later. He goes out with his wife and family out to Yellowstone Park, and Dobler lived in Wyoming, so the families met, and Dobler took Hannafin out fishing, and he demanded again to know who cut that leg, and Hannafin forgot about it. He wanted to know, and he knew Hannafin knew, but Hannafin wouldn't tell him. You know, and to this day, you know, he still doesn't know if Dobler knows. But he wrote about it in the book, so Dobler probably knows if he read the book.
By now, yeah.
I mean, those guys, there's a ton of stories like that of those guys. And the offensive line, they used to tease, and they still do. They still tease Jim Otis, you know, because he gained 1,000 yards in 1975. And, you know, he probably averaged 2.5 yards a carry, 3 yards a carry. But, you know, that was the year, that offensive line, they only gave up 8 sacks the whole year, and they set an NFL record. And Jim Otis led the league in rushing, led the NFC in rushing. So it was a heck of an offensive line. Those were great teams back then.
You know, it's nice. It's nice hearing a story about the camaraderie those guys had back then, where they could pull a stunt like that. And you know, today they'd hear from the player's agent or lawyer immediately if they did something like that. You know, but back then that was you were a team.
Yeah,
you were
they'd have
accepted.
video of
you
it
know,
on Twitter.
You know, that's a good story. That's funny, to say the least.
Obviously, you're a you know, St. Louis. Oh, I'm sorry. Were you going to say something? Obviously, you're a St. Louis Cardinal fan. You know, and Bob and I were talking about this prior to the show. It's, you know, you know, that at some point the Seahawks were thinking about being sold, like in the late '80s, early '90s, you know, to Los Angeles, and being moved. And I remember I was like, well, if they move, I'm not a Seahawks fan. I mean, I'm a Seattle Seahawks fan. I wouldn't be an LA Seahawks fan.
Right.
So you're a Cardinals fan. I mean, obviously, you know, they moved to Phoenix, and then you know, small switch in '88. Are you a do you consider yourself a Chicago Cardinals fan? You know, from like 1920 to, you know, 59 before they moved to St. Louis, or are you just St. Louis? Did you stop following them when they moved to Phoenix and Arizona?
I definitely stopped following them when they moved to Arizona. Now, the one thing, you know, and I mentioned earlier, I was in the Navy in '85, '86. You know, so when they moved, I didn't live here anymore. You know, so it didn't hit me as hard as some of my friends and family, you know, that had season tickets and were still living here, and they had football, and then the next year they didn't. You know, so I was gone in the military, but I didn't follow the Arizona Cardinals. I still really don't. To be honest, I don't really follow the NFL at all anymore. I'll have the game on in the background and pay attention a little bit, but you know, I don't play fantasy football or anything like that. I just kind of, after the Rams left and the way they left, you know, a lot of people just kind of gave up on the NFL here in St. Louis. As far as the Chicago Cardinals, I think a lot of their history is pretty neat, you know, with Charlie Bidwell being the owner and how he passed away right before they won the NFL championship in 1947, and how his wife took over the team, and she married a guy from St. Louis who was instrumental in moving the team here. And I actually have a story on the blog on how the Cardinals left Chicago and why they left Chicago, and it was more about TV money than anything else. It wasn't that St. Louis stole them or anything like that. But back, you remember the old blackout rules where you couldn't televise a home game unless you sold out 72 hours in advance. Well, back then, there were two teams in Chicago, so if one of them was at home, they weren't allowed to televise. Like if the Cardinals were playing at home, they couldn't televise the Bears game on the road. So basically, there weren't any games televised in Chicago unless both teams were on the road the same week. And it came to the point to where, the commissioner, Bert Bell was the commissioner at the time, and he basically told them one of them had to leave, and they had to figure it out. And, and then eventually it was the Cardinals that took off.
So interesting.
That's interesting.
Yeah. A lot of history. Do you think St. Louis will ever have another football team? I mean, they deserve it. Certainly population-wise, they've got what it takes.
Yeah, I really don't think it'll happen anytime soon. I think there's some obstacles that would have to be overcome. One, I think, there's a lawsuit going on right now between the city of St. Louis and the NFL and the Rams, and it's gone a lot farther than anyone thought. I mean, I think there's a deposition stage right now, which people are surprised it hasn't been settled yet. But, there's been rumors that the Chargers might move here, that they're not working out in L.A., and which is interesting. I think it would work, but I don't think if Spanos came and was the owner in St. Louis of a football team, I don't think it would work. I think you got to have a team with local ownership. We haven't had that here with the NFL. We've had it with hockey, and they won the Blues won the Stanley Cup last year, but before that they hadn't won in 50 years. But they had local ownership, and they always made the big trades. They always appeared like they were trying to win a championship, and the fans respect that, whether they knew what they were doing or not. At least they tried. But we had some issues with the football Cardinals the last couple of years they were here when they were trying to get a new taxpayer-funded stadium. They went through a 2-17 stretch, and they had a drug problem on the team. They were a PR nightmare. And I think a lot of the fans and even the politicians were like, we know the NFL is going to expand in a few years. Let the Cardinals go. We'll get an expansion team with local owners, and which almost happened, and because of politics it didn't. But then the Rams moved here, and there was a lot of excitement. They sold out every game the first 10 years until they went through a stretch of, I think they lost 65 games out of 80 over a 5-year period, 15-65. And Kroenke took over, it kind of just went downhill. He wasn't talking to the media. The writing was on the wall. They weren't marketing the team. And the attendance dropped to, 30,000 a game or whatever. I'm surprised they got that much. A lot of people dropped their season tickets. So I think the NFL would work here. I think we're not Cleveland. You're not going to win 3 games a year for 20 years and have sellouts. I don't think many cities are that way, but I think it could work here under the right circumstances, but I'm not sure when that would happen or if it will happen.
I don't know how Cleveland does
I think it'll be a tough sell if they ever bring another team back there. I really can't see it, to be honest. With you,
you know what?
I think
we had the XFL come in here this past year, and they had the president of the XFL team. I mean, he did a masterful job marketing that team. And they sold out the first 2 home games. They had almost 30,000 fans. They only sold the lower bowl tickets in the dome. And it was the way they put the Rams to shame how they marketed that XFL team. So and they had, it wasn't local ownership, but they made it feel that way. And there was a lot of anti-NFL, I'm sure. And I went to both games. It was a lot of fun, and they had a good team. Now if they were the New York team or someone that didn't have any wins or a bad quarterback, it may have been a different story, but I agree. I mean, it's going to be tough to get another team. I'm not sure if it's going to happen in my lifetime.
Yeah, I can't really see it. I think the NFL, because of their concerns about marketing and their profile and everything, I think it's literally next to impossible to relocate a team where 2 teams have moved out of the area already. So that's it. But I really can't see the Cardinals doing that well in Arizona. They're not, and that's the reality of the situation. It becomes a tax write-off for the owner, and that's about it. So, and it's more ego-driven than anything else. So that's the bigger issue. Well, we're almost out of time, and I got one more question for you. Any wrap-up final thoughts about our talk tonight? Any information, extra information you want to share with our audience about either your Twitter account or the website?
No, not really. I think in closing, I think, and I was probably guilty of this as well until I started researching the 1960s Cardinals teams. I think the Cardinals got a bum rap while they were here as being losers, and those 60s teams, they had 2 or 3 teams that were within a half a game of playing for the NFL championship. The 64 team, they had beaten the Browns and they tied the Browns, and they ended up tying a lowly Giants team and ended up a half game out of first. They would have hosted the Colts in St. Louis for the 1964 championship if they had beaten the Giants that day in St. Louis.
Right.
So they had some good teams in the 60s, and Larry Wilson and Charlie Johnson was the quarterback, and I think a lot of people have forgotten about them or they don't know about them. I was born in '66, so I didn't know a whole lot about them until I started doing research.
Yeah, they were a good team during the '60s, but by far and wide they were right up there. They were competitive. They had good players. Larry Wilson was such a class act as a player, and to me he's very much underappreciated in my opinion.
He is.
He was great.
The anniversary of his game against the Steelers is in a few days, where he played with 2 broken hands and intercepted a pass. So you'll see that on the Twitter feed here in a couple of days.
Okay, cool. That's cool. And the one thing I got to say about the St. Louis Cardinals, when they had their white uniforms with the helmets, they just looked so sharp on the field. It was just so cool to watch, and it brings back memories for me watching football in the 1960s with the black and white screen with my whatever teams were playing. I would put the football cards that I had of those teams, one on top of the TV set. And my father always got a charge out of it because we would look at the uniforms and say, "Wow, that's the color that they have on," and all you saw was the black and white one. So it was pretty cool. I always loved their uniforms. I always thought they were very cool. And
I
love
agree.
the old Busch Stadium
logo.
They were playing them.
Yeah.
It was great. Well, Bob, thanks.
Some of the old players didn't care much for the old Busch Stadium because they can't walk anymore because of that AstroTurf. But fun to go to the games.
Yeah, it's amazing. All right, Bob, thanks for being on. Bob Underwood, check out his Twitter account and the website for all things St. Louis Cardinals. And I got to say this, I do appreciate what you do for the hobby because you're keeping the St. Louis Cardinal franchise alive, and hopefully you're getting some people interested in them to collect them, read about them, and study them, and that's what it's all about. So you're doing a great job. Keep it up.
I appreciate it, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. You're welcome. Thanks for being on. All right, Joe, we're down to a few minutes, and I'm going to hand off to you. We're going to go into our 2-minute warning and wrap up. Off to you first.
What a great guest.
What'd you pick up on tonight's show?
What a great guest. You touched on it there, Bob. Just somebody who puts all that on their back and carries it. I mean, Bob's not getting paid for this. He's just a hobby aficionado who just appreciates his team, childhood memories, and just is putting pen to paper, just memorializing that so that everybody else can read about it as well. Tip my hat to him, man. I like it. And I always appreciate ex-Navy, and Bob's ex-Navy nuke. So served his country in the Gulf Wars. Good man. So great guest.
And I gotta say this: when I was prepping for the show tonight, people always think I'm nuts, but one great way I try to relax is at night is reading, and I pull out one of my old media guides of whatever team it may be, and I probably got a couple hundred media guides in my collection. By no means is it complete. And honestly, I love the media guides basically from the 80s back. I'm not big on the newer media guides because they're too corporate looking. But I'm going through right now the 79 media guide. I read parts of it all week. And it's just so cool to see the pictures, to see the write-ups, and read the statistics about the team. I mean, it's just fascinating to me that you're reading the history of the game, and I just say to myself, I just don't understand why media guys are not more popular in the hobby.
Yeah.
Because they just offer so much information for a collector. They're not overly expensive. And again, you don't need to, collect every one of them. But, to have a couple from each decade, I think is just so cool. You know what I mean? And in your case, the Seahawks were 1976. So, realistically, they picked up a run. No, seriously, real cheap. And, you get the whole history of the team there. It's pretty cool. But, I did enjoy reading it. I did enjoy talking about it, and I do enjoy his Twitter feed. I do check and see what he's got on every day, and I try to share it and watch the little videos he has there. All right, we're almost down to a minute. Again, if you don't subscribe to Gridiron Greats magazine, what are you waiting for? Check out our website for all subscription information on gridirongreatsmagazine.com, and also on back ordering information at the same time. Joe, final thoughts? 45 seconds.
Thanks for the introduction to somebody. I like I said, I've been perusing his Twitter and his website for the last couple days, just checking it out. So another great guest. Thanks, Bob. It was very interesting, and like I said to myself, I just think it's so cool. He's got a team that basically was in existence 1960 to 87, and you could have like a complete collection from that. I always thought that was cool. All right, down to 10 seconds. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back hopefully over the next couple of weeks with a new show. And until then, thanks for listening. Again, check out our website, gridirongreatsmagazine.com.
Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, a.k.a. the Football History Dude, and I wanted to thank you for stopping by to listen to another episode here on the Sports History Network. Our podcasters are passionate about uncovering and sharing sports stories from yesteryear. And if you didn't know it already, we have over 30 shows across the network covering all sorts of sports history topics. In fact, here's a glimpse into one of our awesome podcasts here on the network.
Each week, the official Football Learning Academy podcast will take you deep into the history of pro football through interviews with players, coaches, or administrators in the NFL, as well as interviews with Pro Football Hall of Fame selectors, authors, and historians. You'll learn how the game evolved and important moments that shaped the sport into what it is today. And don't miss the Pro Football History Nugget of the Week. Listen to the official Football Learning Academy podcast on the Sports History Network.
How about that? I bet you're super hyped to go listen to that new podcast, right? Well, to learn about this show and all the other podcasts on the network, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com/podcast. Again, that's sportshistorynetwork.com/podcast. Head over there today to find your next favorite sports history podcast.